Welcome back to BioB 160 Principles of Living Systems. I'm Ruth Reitzman, your instructor for the course. In part 1 of this unit, we developed a definition of life and examined the overarching themes of biology. In part 2 of this unit, we will discuss the process of science and the scientific method. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. The word science is derived from Latin meaning to know. In science, we develop and use methods of inquiry to search for information to explain and understand the natural world. Scientific inquiry can be divided into two types: discovery science and hypothesis-based science. Discovery science is the type of scientific inquiry that describes natural structures and processes. This is the type of investigation that is used in new areas of science to gather information about materials or organisms. The observations and the analyses of these observations often use the process of inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning takes general observations that are observed many times and develops statements to summarize the observations. An everyday example of inductive reasoning would be the statement that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. One example of discovery science are the investigations conducted by Jane Goodall, the primate biologist who studied the behavior of chimpanzees in their natural settings. Her field notes, sketches, and photos comprise an enormous data set of information on chimpanzee behavior and interactions. Scientific inquiry requires the collection of data, which are the observations or items of information. Data can be divided into two categories: qualitative data and quantitative data. Qualitative data are descriptive, such as Jane Goodall's field notes on chimpanzee behavior. Quantitative data are measurements, generally some type of numerical data. For example, Dr. Goodall recorded the number of times that she observed specific behaviors and the time of day that the behaviors were occurring. Quantitative data are generally expressed in tables and graphs. Scientific inquiry often leads to hypothesis testing. After making many observations and using inductive reasoning to develop generalized statements, the next step is to develop hypothetical explanations for the observations. An hypothesis is a tentative answer to a well-framed question. Hypotheses can lead to questions that can be tested using deductive reasoning. This is a critical part of the scientific process. A hypothesis can be tested. The hypothesis may be stated as an if-then kind of statement. Let's look at an example. In this example of hypothesis-based deductive reasoning, we will use a familiar object, a flashlight. You observe that your flashlight doesn't work. You pose this question: why doesn't my flashlight work? You develop two tentative explanations for your flashlight not working. First hypothesis: the batteries are dead. Second hypothesis: the bulb is burnt out. Both of these are testable hypotheses. An important aspect of hypothesis testing is the use of controls, which are used to compare our experimental groups. Both positive and negative controls are needed to cancel out variables and to ensure the validity of our experimental results. We'll discuss examples of these controls in our first lab exercise. Another important aspect of scientific inquiry is to repeat our experiments and observations many times. Often these repeats are conducted by different scientists in different locations. It is the repeated observations and experimental results that provide validity to the scientific process. Finally, it is important to recognize the limits of scientific testing. We cannot develop testable hypotheses for every potential explanation. For example, we cannot test for supernatural forces such as ghosts or zombies. These simply are outside the realm of scientific testing, despite what you might have seen in movies such as Ghostbusters. Our last topic in this unit is scientific theories. How many times have you heard someone say, "It's just a theory"? Most of the time when someone says theory, when they really mean a possible explanation for a particular set of observations. So, to use proper scientific terminology, the correct statement would be, "It's just a hypothesis." A true scientific theory is a broad statement that ties together many observations and tested hypotheses. And a valid theory leads to further testable hypotheses. A theory is supported by a large body of evidence. What are some examples of scientific theories? Well, these are atomic theory, gravitational theory, germ theory, and evolutionary theory. The last example, the theory of evolution, or the genetic changes that occur in organisms over time, is a topic we will discuss later in this course. To summarize this unit, we learned that living organisms share certain characteristics, that themes connect the concepts of biology, and that the process of science includes discovery science and hypothesis-based science. After discovering this unit, you should be able to describe the characteristics of living organisms, briefly describe the unifying themes that characterize the biological sciences, and distinguish between the following pairs of terms: discovery science and hypothesis-based science, quantitative and qualitative data, inductive and deductive reasoning. This concludes this section of BioB 160 Principles of Living System. To continue your study of this unit, follow the links for the MyLabs Plus Mastering Biology homework and post your questions and replies on this week's discussion board. Thanks and have a great day.